Hello and welcome to the Huron Chamber Connect podcast. My name is Colin Carmichael. I'm the Executive Director of the Huron Chamber of Commerce and the host of this podcast. The Chamber Connect podcast is intended to help our members connect with each other, help the Chamber learn a little bit more about our members, and also share the expertise of our members with the Chamber community and the broader community. And so I'm very pleased to be joined today by Trish Gill, who is a senior HR consultant and career coach with Ladder HR Solutions. And Ladder is a relatively new member of the Huron Chamber of Commerce and has already stepped up to cornerstone sponsor status. And we thank you for your, Ladder's support of the Chamber, and we can maybe talk about that in a little bit. But why don't we start, Trish, with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and Ladder, and what you do and how you serve your clients in Huron County.
Sure, I would love to. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I love this. Love this stuff. So my background, I have been an HR professional probably I go back to 1999. I started in HR. I actually came from the healthcare field originally. And, back when I graduated, there wasn't a lot of jobs. That was the early 90s and bit of a recession there. But anyways, I always knew I didn't want to stay in healthcare. I was in a biochemistry laboratory. Loved the people I worked with, loved the company, but I didn't want to do lab work for the rest of my life. It was more like an assembly line type of thing. My goal was actually to get into social work. And so after my college diploma, I went back to school for a sociology degree. And then an opportunity at work came up to join the HR group. So I applied and I got it as an HR assistant. And then I went and got my HR management diploma through Fanshawe. Finally finished and this is all, while raising a family and doing all that fun stuff. But, when I look back, the company that I was with was incredible. They gave me incredible opportunities, supported me in terms of my professional development. And when I got into HR, I absolutely loved it. And so I was assistant manager, went up to director, did mergers and acquisitions, did employee relations. My specialty specifically is employee relations, and I know a lot of people don't like that, but you know what? And we carried this into Ladder HR Solutions. It's about demonstrating respect. And so when companies have to restructure, when you have to say goodbye to somebody because the relationship's just not working out, it's important to treat everybody with respect. You've got to do what you've got to do. As a business, you need to make the decisions in order to maintain your sustainability and growth. And so I was very good at that. I was very good at being able to connect with people. Even when there was a complaint, if there was a harassment complaint, I'm just very good at just getting people to talk to each other and say, okay, let's really clear the air here. And what is the root cause of the issue? I also, through my company, was able to get my project management certification as well. I was in HR for so long, I thought, I want to diversify a little bit. And there was an opportunity. So I did get my certification and did some automation implementation, which is a huge thing now as well, right? So from organizations, they're looking to, hey, how do I cut costs? It is about the automation. And so, applicant tracking systems, HRIS systems, performance management, there's so much now out there that it's amazing. And so after 30 years with this organization, I decided to step out. And at the same time, a close friend of mine, Therese Vaness, started up HR Solutions. I was her second employee. And really, we wanted to go out to organizations to say, hey, you may not need HR on a full-time basis, but you may need some support every now and then. And so our business model is really about supporting organizations and ensuring you've got, you're meeting your compliances, the regulations and compliance that you have to meet when you have employees, making sure that you're set up for success, making sure. I love taking a look at, okay, is there anywhere that you can save costs, right? I also did my Lean Six Sigma training, and I love process. So that was my strength, and I brought that to Ladder HR Solutions. And then finally, I went into coaching. I loved coaching. My ability to relate to people and just talk very frankly led to, I just loved coaching, supporting either employees or managers, and saying, hey, let's take a look at how we can move forward and hit the goals that you want to hit. So that kind of rounds up my background. And so from HR, like for Ladder HR Solutions, we provide all kinds of HR support, whether it be taking a look at your compensation program, dealing with terminations, dealing with you want to look at a recruitment strategy. Maybe you just want to do recruitment and you just need a helping hand. We're there to help you. We're fractured HR, so we can come in, help you out, and leave. One of the things that we're finding that we're really supporting people on is that if they have let's say they have an HR professional who leaves and they've got a gap while they're recruiting another one, we can step in and help you. We also do payroll and bookkeeping, so helping small businesses out in that regard. Again, we can do payroll for a small business probably within an hour or two. And so you don't have to hire a full-time person to do that. We can step in, do it for you, and then move out again. A lot of people are using QuickBooks and different applications for it, so it makes it really simple. So that's kind of like what we do.
Yeah. Well, that's great. You and I have talked in the past about how many businesses there are in Huron County in particular, mostly because of its rural makeup, where human resources, it's not that it isn't important, but it's the businesses aren't of a size that could justify a full-time or an HR team or even a full-time HR person.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone ends up being responsible for human resources kind of off the corner of their desk sometimes, or only 1 week out of 4 when it's payroll time, or whatever, that kind of thing, where it's not their full-time job. So it's difficult for them to stay up to date and to stay current, and they're distracted by the other responsibilities that they have. Sometimes that person is the business owner themselves, and
Correct. Yes.
yeah, and that's the situation I was in when I owned my business. Was I was doing payroll at 11:30 on a PM on a Saturday night or something, because that was the only time I had to do it. And you're never really sure if you're doing it properly, because your expertise are probably not human resources if you're doing it at 11 o'clock at night. So so yeah, I think that kind of fractional HR, as you said, or I don't, you didn't say pay as you go, but that's kind of where my brain went in terms of being able to use your services
it is basically
piecemeal
pay as you
basis, right?
go. Yeah. You call us up when you need us. We come in, we take a look, help you, get a solution in place. And then, call us when you need us again. We're always there. There's enough of us. There's about 7 individuals now that work for Ladder HR Solutions. And so one of the benefits also is that there's backup, right? So if one person's on vacation, there's another person who's available who has the same expertise. We have such depth in our expertise. Like, I've been in HR for 30 years. The owner has been in HR for 30 years. Another colleague of mine, so we've got a lot of depth there. We've all got our different specialties. So yeah, I see so many benefits, especially with the clients that we're helping out. It's like, if you take recruitment, for example, recruitment is not a difficult thing to do. However, most people don't realize that, you should be, asking the same questions to a certain degree, and making sure that you're making notes. And you have to keep those notes for a certain amount of years, because if there was ever a complaint of unfairness that comes from one of your interviewees, you can prove that you followed a fair process. And so just things like that, we can come and set everyone up and say, okay, here's the process that we recommend. This is what we would say that you would follow. And off you go. Like, we step out again, and you're on your own. And then if you have any questions, you call us up as needed. Right. So it can save organizations a lot of money. even just from an efficiency standpoint, getting it right as you're growing too, right? So if you're an organization that's 10 people, before you get to your 50th hire, and now trying to put processes in place become more difficult. So if you do it early,
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes much easier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that first hire is always a difficult one as well. And when you've been running your small business by yourself for several years and go to hire that first employee, and where do you start? And you start Googling and you start trying to figure it out yourself. And there's I think a long history, and particularly in rural areas where things are done a little more informally than other places, and particularly in agriculture is one of those areas where and that's okay to a point, but there are risks there to your business, and there's um and so you want to make sure you're protected when the folks pull up with in cars with government logos on the doors and clipboards in their hands, that you're covered, and
Yeah,
that
for sure.
you've followed the regulations, which change so often.
They do.
That for any person who's not doing HR full time is difficult. So even things like EI, there were changes not that long ago to EI and work sharing around, in response to the tariffs and those kinds of things, or changes to the Employment Standards Act, and or even just remembering how the heck you're supposed to do stat pay. Like
Yeah.
I
It
mean, it
does.
happens how many
Things
times a year,
change.
and I still could never remember how I was supposed to calculate stat pay.
And there's always variations, right? Like there's always a different situation. There's always variations situation, and then you have to rethink it all over. Okay, now what do I do? Now how do I apply that, right? And so sometimes it's nice to be able to call somebody up and go, "Am I doing this right?" Yep, absolutely. And okay, you're off to the races. And same with common law. Like common law changes all the time, and so even with the employment letter, and you're right. I mean, if you have just a couple of employees, like there are certain regulations that don't apply to you
Mm-hmm.
yet until you get a certain, like for example, oh, I can't remember the one right offhand, but regulations, there's certain regulations that come into play when you have 8 employees,
Yeah.
and then more regulations come in when you have 25 employees. But just being able to cover that off, common law, that's where I was going. So recently, after COVID, the employment letter changed because now we have to have the layoff provision in there, which nobody did in the past because it wasn't a big deal, but now it is. We all know that we need that clause in there. If you want to lay people off, you have to have the clause in your employment letter, otherwise you're open to constructive dismissal. So there's always new developments. The most recent one is reflecting on the termination clause in employment letters, and now lawyers want you to do it differently. You're not allowed to say, well, we reserve the right to terminate for any reason, obviously following ESA. You can't put that in your letters anymore. And so these are the things that we actually proactively reach out to our clients as well, and just say, hey, by the way, here's a new change, just so you're aware of it. If you want to talk about it, give us a call, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, just want to make you aware, first and foremost.
And there's really no other way to get that information in a time, the particularly with the common law stuff, because it's
Mhm.
not like the government makes a change to a regulation or a piece of legislation and it gets, I mean, those things often don't get covered in the news anyway. But there isn't someone doesn't come around knocking every time there's a new court case that changes case law on human resources, right? So as
Exactly.
as someone managing human resources within your business on a part-time basis, and I keep coming back to these folks in Huron County that are doing HR on a part-time basis within their organizations, because it's just so common. And I mean, obviously we have employers in the county that have full-time HR and highly skilled, highly trained HR managers and teams, and of course those folks are there. And but it's just so common for the smaller organizations to be at a disadvantage, I think. And um, and of course, you and I are trying to do a little work to alleviate some of that, and so
Yeah.
uh, uh, um, we have a so for our listeners at home, we have a new HR peer network from the Huron Chamber of Commerce in partnership with and sponsored by Ladder HR, and this is a um, informal monthly virtual gathering of folks who are doing HR in some way. Whether they should be or not is the joke that I make. You know, whether it's whether you're qualified or not, if you're doing HR, this group is for you. Maybe just talk from your perspective. The value of this group and what we're hoping to accomplish with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I came aboard and I asked you, is there an HR group I can join? I was certified, CHRL certification, so I belonged to the London chapter for quite a while, and then joined there was a Strathroy chapter that we would attend as well, and really, and then so I'm looking for these small town chapters because I just love talking about what's new or what are the challenges that people are facing, or even saying, okay, there are certain topics, let's what's the new greatest thing out there for performance management, or how do you like, this is the type of situation that has come up, and what would you guys recommend? Or even just we're having a job fair, and this is the people that we're looking for, and if anybody can get the word out so that we can get good representation, can you do it? So it's really about supporting each other. What are you currently facing? What is the best practice? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? And this forum, I think, is great for understanding, okay, what do people do when faced with this situation? So when I was with the Strathroy group, often we would bring in a speaker. Each person would go around, and 1 month they would bring in a speaker, and just to talk about the latest topics that are going on. Like, I know our next HR forum is about automation and different HR aspects that you can automate, and you don't need to be struggling with it. It just makes life so much easier, right?
Yeah,
So
some of the tech tools that are available that I think a lot of folks think are too expensive or too, they're for larger organizations, but there are some tools that will severely cut down the amount of time you're spending on human resources and payroll in particular, but at not a huge cost at all. And
exactly.
I remember I was so glad when I discovered these on my own, and was able to stop doing my payroll deduction calculations in Excel, and trying to figure out. And then, I only had one employee at that point, so it was manageable. But when I went from one to three, one year, I said there has to be a better way, and I was able to find a tool, and there's far more available now than there was then. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and sharing those tools and other concerns, even just the I mean, I think HR can be a lonely role, right? Because often, I mean, even if you're full time, you're probably the only HR person in the organization, unless you're in a large
Mm,
organization,
yeah.
and everyone hates you. No, I'm kidding, but
You're
you know,
afraid when you walk down the hallway.
well,
It's true, right? And
there are no shortage of jokes about HR, and so it can be a kind of isolating role within the workplace, and no one wants to go out to the bar after work with the HR person. That's just so. um
so we have to support each other.
yeah, well, exactly,
Right?
exactly. but
Yeah.
but even things as one of the things we talk about at the chamber quite a bit with almost everyone I talk to in Huron County is our unemployment rate, and how low our unemployment rate is, and how hard it is for businesses in Huron County in just about any sector to find employees, not even not even in like highly skilled anything.
Yes.
And I've come across members of the chamber who thought it was them. They thought they were the only ones who couldn't. There was something wrong with what they were doing, that no one wanted to work for them, and they were actually quite relieved to discover that everyone was having the same trouble, because in London and KW and Toronto and other places, they're talking about how high the unemployment is and everyone's looking for work. And, and you see that on the news, and some folks here thought that there was something wrong with them, that, no one wanted to work for them. And they were relieved to understand that, no, that's the trend in Huron County. And you do have to work a little harder, and you do have to
Mhm.
think a little bit more about what the job description says, and make sure that people aren't self-selecting out, that you're not missing those opportunities because there's such a smaller available workforce. And so
I find coupled with that too, and some of my clients in the more rural areas is, it's there's a lot of people, and let me preface this with, there's a lot of people in London who are looking for jobs, and as a career coach, I'm saying, well, would you be interested in relocating? That's always a question I ask, because I remember when I graduated college, all my friends and myself included, we went to the rural areas and got our experience, and then from there, you would go where you wanted to go, depending on where your life was taking you. Um, but there's not as much movement anymore because the housing and rental markets are right. That's the barrier as well. It's not as easy to just pick up your life and move somewhere else. And so I have one client actually that I actually helped them out in terms of, okay, what kind of rental opportunities are there? And I went out and, built relationships with whomever I could, real estate, the local chamber that was there, anyone, to say, okay, where are the rentals? And so if while we're hiring, let's make sure that we can say to them, if you're relocating, here's some opportunities, and kind of, and it worked out
yeah.
really, really well. So I think that's the hard part, is that rentals are not so easy to come by in the rural areas. Housing is not cheap. And then of course people don't know if I'm going to stay there or not for a long time. So
Yeah.
making that kind of a commitment is, so those are the things I think that are standing in the way more so now, which is why you're not getting the people who are unemployed in London coming out to, Huron County, right?
Right. And then transportation is another issue. And these all overlap and they all
Yeah.
interweave, and it's not as simple as a stack of resumes against a job posting. And
Yeah.
and then throw the immigration issue on top of that, and the complications there, and all of the those aspects that businesses in Huron County rely on our immigrant communities to keep the doors open in a lot of cases because of our low unemployment. But that, it causes not cause it there are um uh, complications there again around housing and transportation and other things. And so it's a pretty complex. We think of our nice quiet little rural communities, and everything's simple, and that kind of thing. And it's HR is a complex issue, no matter where you are and what size your business is. There are complexities that can really be easily missed and have pretty serious consequences for an organization when things inevitably go sideways. And I don't think I've talked to anybody who has been in business, for any considerable length of time, that hasn't had some employee relationship go sideways in one way or another. And it's not always catastrophic, but it is, and you have to kind of, be ready for that, and have your um HR ducks in a row, as I've said to
Yeah.
you a few times. But
Yeah, it's true. The other component I was just thinking of is in terms of healthcare and the availability of healthcare in the rural areas as well, or not being available. And so another situation with a client where an individual got hurt on the job, and of course we want to offer accommodation and modify duties, but they had to go and travel an hour and a half to go to their own physician because they couldn't find one in the area. And so, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but then that person is away from work for 3 hours just traveling to go to the physician, and then add on the appointment. And,
mhm.
it makes it more complex. That I
Well,
feel for these small employers out
mm,
in the rural areas, because your access to all of these things are limited. And so your labor force is, it can their absences can be greater because of that, because you have to allow them the time to go to the doctor that's an hour and a half away, maybe in Burlington or Kitchener or whatever, because there's no doctor in the area. So yeah,
Well,
it can be complex.
yeah, my guest last week on the podcast was Kimberly Payne from the Alexandria Marine and General Hospital Foundation in Goderich, and we talked about the importance of a strong hospital and solid kind of healthcare system for employers and employees, and to be able to attract and retain employees. It's you want a hospital that can provide the level of service that people expect, and it's a little different from the primary care physicians you were just talking about, but it's part of that. It's part of that equation, right? In terms of attracting and retaining, and then benefits is a whole other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Employers are having to offer benefits in types of jobs that even 10 years ago, at least anyway, you would never have expected to get benefits, and now you can. And some of that is that benefits are a little easier. That market has changed a bit as well. That's part of it, but especially in a tight labor market here, anything that our employers can do. So there's all of that, and
All about
I know
retention.
you work in that field a little bit as well in terms of offering benefits and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really about, how can you retain the people that you have, right? You have good employees, they've been there for a while. How do we make them happy? You're happy to come to work, you're happy to stay at this employer. And I found it ironic, in the past. I'm assuming it's still like that, but even employers offering professional development, just support and growth, because the employees don't want to feel like I'm becoming stagnant. I'm not going to be marketable anymore. And so if you offer professional development, the irony is that you think, okay, well, I'm going to help them upskill and they're going to leave. But in actuality, what I've seen is that they don't leave, because they're like, I don't want to leave this. I don't get it anywhere else. I don't want to
Yeah.
leave the fact that they're going to help me upskill and then I can utilize it. I feel very marketable. Therefore, it becomes job security. It's the weirdest thing, but it is the little things that you can
Yeah.
offer your
And
employees.
and so my guest next week on the podcast is Paul McInnes from Jockey North America, just south of Goderich, and I know from talking to him in the past that they've made big investments in their employees and in that professional development, and developing their workforce right from high school co-ops, kind of all the way through that, the full range, as opposed to oh, there's a vacancy, let's see who we can find. Like, they're developing their own workforce internally and making
Which
those
is
investments, which
fantastic.
is and so I'm looking forward to hearing more from Paul on that on the
It,
podcast next week.
it's amazing. It's amazing. I actually, again, another client that I'm working with right now, we're building career ladders. And I firmly believe, and my previous CEO that I worked very closely with, she agreed with it too. Like, you want to support the employees, but it is the employee's responsibility to determine, where do I want to go? How do I want to grow? But if the employer is there to assist them, and give them the information they need to say, okay, if I'm going to go in this career, what do I need to do? And oh, by the way, there's a few dollars there to help me out, but I can grow and maybe get experience in the workplace by working on a project or something, so that I'm
Mhm.
prepared to move to the next level. This is huge job security. It's huge
Yeah.
retention strategies, right? And keeping people in place, because they know that there's movement, even in a very, very small organization, right? Obviously, everybody wants to grow. And so knowing the kind of talent that you'd be maybe growing into, and helping your small group, evolve
Mhm.
with your business is a great strategy.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you and I could just keep chatting for another couple of hours, but I have promised that this would be a short form podcast and not
Are
a
we getting
long
to the
form.
end already?
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure, but it feels that way. I don't have a timer in front of me, but yeah, I mean, we could talk about this is my
So
challenge
much.
with all of my guests so far on the podcast, but even other conversations I have. I can talk about this stuff for forever, because it's just so fascinating and it's so relevant, I think, to to every member, every business in Huron County. And so, but I think like before we go, I'll mention again the HR peer network that so this is every uh, um, the second Wednesday of every month on Zoom. We all meet at 8:30 a.m. Start off hump day
Coffee and HR.
with our HR colleagues, and so that'll be so something I again recommend for anyone who's doing HR, even if it's not on your business card. And that's everyone from owners down to office admins and everyone in between I've been very careful about not saying it's for HR pros because we want the HR amateurs there too,
Yeah,
and
any
because
way
they're
we
the ones
can
that
make
really
this
need the
safe.
support, right? So
Yeah. And and I would love to have conversations where it's like they can walk away and they've got a nice nugget that they can apply right away. And hey, it didn't cost you anything. I don't
yeah,
mind talking about anything during that forum. So
yeah.
bring
Well,
your issues.
yeah, and so we really we appreciate the support of Ladder HR in getting this peer network off the ground, and as I mentioned, you're the presenting sponsor of the HR peer network, and that gives me an opportunity to segue into the presenting sponsor for this podcast, which we don't have yet, and so this square over my left shoulder here is reserved for a logo of a business, anyone in kind of in Huron County that's interested in helping this podcast continue and helping to support the chamber in the work that we do. Get in touch with me, and we can talk about the sponsorship of the podcast because it's a good opportunity to get at least a mention on the podcast every week. But we do rely on our members to support the work that we do, and so thanks again to Ladder for your work. And I think as I mentioned off the top, you're a relatively new member of the Huron Chamber. Um, and you and I have bumped into each other at events now and again. And you were out to our golf tournament a couple of weeks ago, which
That
was
was fun.
great. So I don't know, maybe I don't want to put you on the spot here, but maybe if you have anything to share about the value of chambers in general, not just the Huron Chamber, but why Ladder and you are take such an interest in being an active member of the chamber as opposed to kind of a more passive member, which is if that's all folks have time for, that's fine too. But
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I
No,
know that I can say fairly confidently that you folks at Ladder were pretty keen to get involved right off the bat. So there's something
yeah.
there, and I'm curious what it is.
Well, there's not a lot of other ways to meet, the businesses in the region, right? It is there's great information if you have any questions about local businesses or what the needs are in the areas. Go to the chamber. If you want to present something, because you've got something new and great and you want to get it out there, go to the chamber. If I want to meet and find out what's going on with the local businesses, like, go to the chamber. Like, it has always been kind of the hub for and a connection to all the local businesses, which we tap into all over the place. Actually, we're with the London Chamber, we're with the Strathroy Chamber, we're with the Woodstock. Like, we've got a few.
Mm.
My interest is the Huron Chamber because I am in Huron County as well. So it's like I just moved and I want to get embedded in. So the chamber is really the central hub. There is really no other place to go, and I think the events and the networking capabilities that you offer is amazing.
Yeah, and one of the things I say to new members when I meet with them the first time is that in many ways you'll get out of a chamber membership what you put into it. And we, I have members that I don't hear from a lot, and that's fine. But the ones who really get the benefits of being a member of the chamber are the ones who I do hear from regularly, and they let me know what their needs are. They let me know what their concerns are, and then we see if we can solve them together, or that I can connect them with someone else who can help them, through whatever it is. And in the case of HR, that's probably going to be you, Trish. And if it's something financial, it's going to be someone else. And if it's something, the our tagline of connecting community leaders, I mean, that's what we do is connection, right? So,
Yeah.
So it's fun. I mean,
Very valuable.
I get to have these conversations at least once a week, and often once a day with members across the county, which
That's
is great
amazing.
for me. So
Who else does it? Like I think the chamber has always been that, like you said, that connection for small businesses, for any businesses. Yeah.
mhm. Well, so I want to thank you very much for coming on the podcast,
My
and
pleasure.
being my guest on the podcast, and sharing a bit about you and Ladder and what you folks do, and also just the issues that face our members from a human resources perspective. I think it's one of those things that like I said is so complex that there's a temptation to just kind of pretend it's, I'll deal with that later because I don't,
Yeah.
it's
Well, and
scary HR stuff.
what my last comment being is that, even when I was, a contractor for a while, I've been working for myself and having to do my own accounting. I hated accounting. And it was like, so hire the expert to do it and then focus on what you're good at, right? And
Yeah.
we offer just, we can jump in, give you something, jump out again. If it's something that, you'd rather not be doing and get somebody else to do it, we're happy
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah. And that's such an important bit of business advice, especially for sole proprietors or very small businesses, is focus on the stuff you hate, and get help. The stuff you love will come easy. Like that's the easy
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. And that's probably
Like
where
you,
you're going to make your money, right? You've got a business strategy, you want to go with the growth, but you've got
the,
this HR stuff going
the
on
the
here.
stuff you love will make you money. The stuff you hate will cost you money, in the long run, right? Like it can undo all of the work that you do, on this on the part of the part of your business that you love, that you're in business for.
Yes.
The stuff that you hate and that you avoid and that or do at 11 p.m. at night, like I used to, that's what'll hold your business back. And that's, and HR, I think, is one of them. And like you said, the bookkeeping and the finance piece is the other one, where people don't like that stuff. And so they put it off as long as they can, or
It's the
uh,
painful stuff.
yeah, but
It's
it's
like the stuff you love,
that's
and then you've
what'll
got the
kill
painful
you
stuff.
every
Yeah.
time. When you see a business, failure, it's almost never because it's almost never the core business that was the problem. It was the other stuff. And so, anywho, um,
Well, thank you
see,
so much for allowing me to be with you today.
well, like I said, I really appreciate your support, and appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing with our listeners. And I know that I will bump into you at an event sometime soon. August is a little slow,
Wednesday.
but well, we'll be on Zoom next week, right, for the
That's right.
HR Peer
Next.
Network, and so
Absolutely.
we will at least see each other virtually there, and in person very soon, I hope. So, thanks again, Trish, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, Paul. Take care.